Hey girl, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm so fired up to be here. I feel like I just hung with you, and I know you were telling me that it was back in 2021 that we did our original recording session.
That's nearly 2 years. That's too long. We should make this an annual thing.
I agree. I actually got to come down to Australia and visit you in IRL.
Oh my God, please come and stay with me. We would love that.
I love it. I definitely want to make it happen. Like it's on my bucket list. So I'm gonna find the time.
2024. That's it. It's happening. Let's lock that in.
2024. Okay, bold.
I saw that you just turned 33. Happy birthday. Looked like a real vibe.
Thank you. It was a vibe. Honestly, I have to say it was my best birthday party yet. And I think after I wouldn't say I have been having birthday parties for 33 years, but of the parties that I planned that I could remember, this was definitely the best because I really focused on having like the people in my life that really meant something to me, that have been there for me in the past couple of years. And just, I did what I wanted, sometimes you just, and also I was at a point in my life where I could afford to take care of people on my birthday. When you're working and you don't have a lot of money and you can't, you want to celebrate your birthday and you ask everyone to chip in, that always makes me feel uncomfortable. And so even though I just did a karaoke night, it's not that extravagant, but I was happy that I was able to like take care of my guests. So it just felt like, I don't know, it was a birthday that really resonated with me. I did karaoke, had fun. We had pizza at some like local spot, ate it on my friend's front of her car, and then just sung our heart out all night and like dressed in denim and diamonds, and it was silly and it was fun and it was a great release.
Oh, I love that. I love that. The diamonds and denim and diamonds. That's sick. That's my vibe. All the sparkles, but like low key cool as well.
100%. It was a last minute like theme. I totally love themes, and everyone was a little annoyed that I pulled a last minute theme. But who doesn't have some jean in their closet and, throwing a bit of that glitter on their eyes and whatever. It was worth it. We had fun.
This year I did Barbie and tequila. And like I'm the only one of my friends that is obviously like has the full wardrobe of hot pink attire. So I'm out here being like, hey, I was actually in London at the time and I had my suitcase and I was like going through to the girls being like, okay, I've got this, like you can wear whatever you want, but it's Barbie and tequila. Everyone's doing shots.
I love that. And obviously pink is your favorite color now, like your nails, your hoodie, your backdrop. I love it.
I mean, it's all a vibe. I'm a pink girl.
I'm a black girl.
Yes, you are. Every year on my birthday, I love to kind of reflect on, what the year has been like. What are the highlights been? What are the lowlights been? What do I want for this next kind of year coming up for myself? Have you set any kind of goals for this next year?
Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing is practicing being in the present more. I think that I spend a lot of time in my head creating scenarios. I live a very stressful life being an entrepreneur and building this company. And so a lot of the times I'm stuck in thinking mode or trying to mediate outcomes, whatever it is. And I'm constantly in the future. I'm constantly stressed and thinking about what if this and what if that, and creating scenarios in my head. And I realized that's not a great place to be. And so I think for me, 33 is all about trying to live in the here and now, which is really like hard to do, easy to say, but just being present in the moment and not trying to let my mind take over my thoughts. And I think that will help me lead a less stressful life. And yeah, I think it's really it comes down to stress and managing that stress. And because really, your brain is so powerful, your thoughts are so powerful that half the time when you're worried and thinking about things and creating stories, they never pan out because they're not real, right? So being present and focusing on what is actually happening and what is actually in your control and just working through that is a saner life for me. So I'm really focusing on that. And so far it's going well. And I mean, I catch myself a lot drifting, but at least I'm catching myself and then understanding where I'm at, what mindset I'm in, and then being able to bring it back to the present. So it's a process, but I think it's important for me to live more in the present, less in the future, definitely not in the past. And that helps me go on with my day.
I resonate with that like so much. I feel like I am constantly in conversation with myself about, things in the past, things in the future, conversations that have to be had. I really have like that busy mind. And it's true that, it's so easy to say that, we should live more present, but it's actually really hard. So when I observe myself, I'm driving myself crazy. I struggle to get out of that. I struggle to get out of that loop thinking like that just goes around and around, like same conversation, same conversation, same conversation. How do you actually get out of it? Like, are you just kind of thinking something, observe that it's happening, and then you're like, I need to change what I'm doing right now or do something? What's the trigger and what's the action?
I think we've talked about this briefly on your podcast before, but I'm in therapy, business coach, therapy, whatever you want to call it, but I do it twice a week. Once a week with my partners and once a week on my own. So the first step is kind of working through what are the fears, right? So what's driving these thoughts? What are the actual fears? And a lot of the time, it comes down to a specific thing that's driving those thoughts. And so it starts with addressing that thing. So maybe I'm just going to make up something for the sake of the conversation. Let's say it's a competitor. Let's say I'm worried about a competitor. I see something on the market. I'm worried about it. So the first thing I'm going to do is create anxiety around this thing, right? This product, let's say. And then I might spiral into an anxious Les and creating stories and getting busy with, just this ripple effect of anxious movement. And then so what I'll do is in that moment, maybe I'm going to want to go deep into that. Like I go look for it and I speak to people about it and I search for things. Like I'm engaging in the thoughts. I'm engaging in the anxiety. So to your point, I'm looping, but I'm not just looping, I'm looking for it. I'm speaking about it. I'm thinking about it. So I'm feeding it. Exactly. I'm feeding the thoughts, the ideas, and the stories. So what do I do? The first thing I've learned is to stop doing that at all costs. Now that's really hard, but that's willpower, right? So the minute I've identified there's something that's consuming my brain that's not positive and that's maybe allowing me to get away from the here and the now and what's in my control, I stop feeding it. So that's the first thing I do. So whatever I was doing to feed it, I stop doing that. So I just catch myself. I'm like, okay, I'm about to feed it. And sometimes like as humans, we're kind of sick. Like we want to feed it, and we want to like be in this loop. Like we're almost addicted to it. So that's the first step is cutting it off. Then the second step, so once you cut it off, you actually realize that you stop thinking about it as much, which is powerful. So you stop thinking about it. So it's in your mind less. And then it's really just about taking the time to understand that you need to have action in your life. So if you can't action anything on this like fear or this thought or this anxiety, then it needs to be dropped. Like if there is no action that can be had in the moment, then you have to let it go. And that is also really hard. But again, it's just practicing. It's like it gets easier. It's like going to the gym. The gym is hard. And when you go to the gym, that's my opinion. It definitely gets easy to go to the gym, but once you're there, you can do more, right? And so it's the same with this. You train your brain and you get stronger and stronger in capturing those thoughts and cutting them off and then just staying in the present. I mean, that's really what I'm working on now. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that it's important to not feed the thoughts and engage in the thoughts. And just to remember that if you can't act on it, that it's out of your control and you need to just let it go and refocus that energy on whatever is in your control and whatever you can push forward in a positive way.
Wow. Yeah. Gosh, thank you for sharing that.
It's hard. Yeah.
It is hard. It is hard. I want to start talking kind of about, we were just saying that the last time we spoke was December 21. So that's been like 2 years. And I kind of feel like I want to recap where you were at December 2021, paint the picture. Where were you in Rev? What were you kind of doing? Or what was like big happening then? How many retailers were you in? That kind of thing. And then I kind of want to just talk through a bit of like what's happened since then. Like what have been the highs and lows over the last 2 years that are kind of leading us to today?
Totally. So 2021, I got to get myself back there because so much has happened since that time. So 2021 in December, we were getting ready to make some pretty big moves going into 2022, which was taking our product from a 2 square format and making it a single serve format, so a 1 square format. Now, when we decided to make this decision to make the move, we didn't understand what type of impact it would actually have on the business. Obviously, we knew it needed to be done. We had no choice. So there was a couple of reasons why we had to make this decision. One was the customers didn't like consuming 2 squares at a time. And the solution to rewrap the second square didn't really make sense to us. We didn't enjoy the customer experience. So that was one piece from a customer standpoint. We had a lot of people that couldn't eat 2 squares at one time and really wanted that single serve. Second was the company, the 2 square offering didn't make sense at the price point that it was at. So we were either going to have to significantly raise the price in the 2 square format or make it a smaller pack size and do a small price increase. It's easier to digest at the price increase at a single square format than it would be to increase it at a 2 square format. It's just a price tag on the shelf matters. And when people are shopping, they will say that, not when they're shopping, actually, when they're not shopping, they will say that price doesn't always matter, that it comes down to different things. But that's just not true. When you are in the grocery store and you are looking at the different products and there is a product that's less expensive, but seems like it's just as good, the consumer is going to choose that product. So for us, it didn't make sense. I don't remember the exact cost, but it was going to have to be like $6 or something like that to price it at for the 2 square. And then we brought it down to a single serve and we charged $2.49, which is a lot more palatable for a fair trade, clean ingredient, functional chocolate bar. It gives you the things that you actually need. So there was that piece that we needed to do it for the survival of the business. And so we made this decision because we had no choice to make it, but we didn't understand, we didn't fully understand the repercussions of what this format change would be because it was the first time we ever did it, right? So going into 2022, we had a lot of momentum and we were, continuing our launch into the US, which was going really well. We were continuing to figure out our manufacturing process. We were continuing to build out our community. And then in June 2022, we made the 2 square to 1 square change and everything just plummeted. Like our sales plummeted, like everything it exploded. Let's put it that way. It exploded.
Why?
So basically, what happened is when there's a series of things that happened that if any entrepreneur is listening to this and wants to make a format change on their product, listen good, because you don't fully understand the complexities of what this means, right? Like you think, okay, you're going from 2 squares to one. How crazy can it be? So here's what happened. So basically, when we shipped the product in to the stores, okay, we printed our packages. Our packages were significantly smaller. So when we printed them, we had to print a smaller UPC code. And the UPC code is what everybody uses to scan the product out when they're at the cash. So the first error that we made was the UPC code was too small and it couldn't scan at the cash, okay? So we're talking about millions of bars being on the market and it's not scanning at the cash register, okay? This is crazy. Insane. So like a week goes and like we start getting phone calls and people are starting to say like, we can't scan the bars. So we're like, this is a disaster. And so what does this mean? So if they can't scan the bars, the cashier needs to punch the UPC code in by hand, okay? The cashier then punches this in as a cash item. So what happens in the system is the system cannot detect how much inventory is on the shelf, okay? So basically what's happening at this point, it's saying to our distributors that the product is like in stock, but the product's not in stock. It's actually out of stock. Okay. So that was the first major disaster. And now what we realized is, so we did test our UPC at our printer, but that's just one printer. What we later discovered is that many different retail stores have different types of scanners with different technology. So just because you tested your printer where you're printing does not mean that it's approved and certified to scan at all scanners at retail stores. So GS1 is basically, it's there for all your barcode needs. So it's like GS1 works with all the retailers. Okay. So they like generate your barcodes and they set them up and all that stuff. So when you're doing your packaging design, you can actually send GS1 a copy of your artwork and they will scan it and give you a certification saying that the product scans. So like, and it's $15. Can you imagine? But again, no one tells you these things. Like you're learning them as you go. And even graphic designers, unless they're like regulatory food specialists, they might not understand the guidelines on how big or small a UPC code should be. So again, it's like that new beginner kind of stupidity that happens.
And it's like if you've got a small product, you've got a small billboard to work with. So of course you're kind of like, I don't want to make this bigger than it has to be because there's a lot of stuff that needs to go on this packaging.
Exactly. And that's actually a whole other conversation of how much needs to go on a packaging and the sizing and what needs to go on. Like it's complicated, but there is a special barcode that like the barcode basically it's a cropped barcode, but it's meant for mini packaging. So it does still scan, but we didn't know that. So basically we had to like quickly figure out how we were going to repackage our millions of dollars of raw packaging materials we had in the warehouse because we couldn't afford to throw it out. So we had to like buy a machine with $17,000, get it to our facility, relabel everything through this machine. We had to order labels. So it was crazy. Repacked it. Like it was just a nightmare. So it became super demoralizing for the whole team. So we have this UPC code problem. Then we have this inventory problem. We don't know what's selling, what's not, because everything is not detected in the retailer system. So our sales significantly drop because nobody's taking orders because in their system it says they have. Like in a grocery store, you have to imagine there's 40,000 SKUs. They're not focused on midday squares. Additionally, in the summer is the slowest time for grocery stores. So people are on vacation, staffing is lower. So there's not as many people working the store. And then the third thing, which was the price tag. So the execution of removing the old price tag to put the new price tag on was a disaster. So basically it said $3.99 for one square, which is our old price, instead of $2.49. So customers were flabbergasted. They were like fuming. They're like, you slice the package in half and you charge us the same amount. There was a crisis, you know? And so we went through that. And I would say that that was almost the entire 2022 going into to 2023, I would say. That's basically what my year has been like, you know, coming from the down, the whole team and everybody, us just getting this company back up. We had a change management situation and we, you know, had a culture shift, which was really hard too. I think like, you know, a lot of people came in at the time where there was, you know, this one square change, which created a lack of momentum. And as founders, it was really, really hard when you're going through your worst times. You're not sure where the company is going. You have a lot of pressure. You're losing money. Like I remember last June, we were not this June 2 years ago now, we were losing $1 million a month. Okay. And we were just hemorrhaging money. You're trying to get the team to be motivated. You're trying to be motivated yourself and you're just hurting inside. And as a founder, it's a lonely road. Like people don't feel bad for you and they shouldn't feel bad for you. Like you chose this position. You're the owner, you're the founder. It's your job. But, you know, speaking to, honestly, like it was hard. Like I felt alone. I felt misunderstood. And while you're feeling this extreme fear, you have to fire up a team and that becomes really hard.
And deal with investors and shareholders and everyone else that's involved.
Totally. And then your customers and you're hemorrhaging money. You know, you did this big changeover and now you got to rebuild the company back up. We had the change management culture was suffering and we were trying to, hire and again, like trying to bring on people that fit the culture. And one of the hardest things that I've noticed over the last 2 years and even since the beginning of time is it's very hard to get the team right. And that doesn't mean that the people that have been at Midday Squares are not the right fit or weren't good in their own ways. It's just that every company is different, every task is different. You need to find people that fit into what you're doing, so we've gotten that wrong here and there. Some people felt that they weren't the right fit for MDS. So building a team was challenging over the last 2 years. And I feel like today we're finally in that flow, really taking our time to do the due diligence and building that team. And you learn, like when you start, you know nothing. Like 5 years ago, I wasn't a CEO. 5 years ago, I wasn't, the leader of a 45-person company. So overnight, you got to figure things out really quickly and understand what you need, what you want, and lead people. So I think over the last 2 years, those were a lot of our pain points. And then I would say it's only in the last like 6 months that I'm starting to really see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like Midday Squares is back to where it was in terms of the sales. And well, we'll get into that in a minute. But ultimately, the coming up from the One Square changeover was rough, but we made it through. Like we weathered the storm. And I'm so proud of like the team and everybody who just helped propel the company forward when like you're doing this really bold fucking move. But like at the same time as entrepreneurs, your job is to be bold and take calculated risks. But if you don't take risks, you're not going to get to where you need to go. That's my belief, and so I think it was a necessary risk, but it was rough.
I also really believe that if it's just all straight up, it's linear growth, like you're not learning along the way. Like even though it's the worst of the worst times when you're in the midst of that stuff, when you come out the other side, you are a stronger person. You have developed a new skill set. You have developed like that extra layer of, resilience and you're stronger as a person. So I really do believe that the bad times, end up being something that are crucial actually in the end.
No, I couldn't agree more. Like I think it's crazy what you learn in times of stress. Like when when your back is pinned to a wall, okay, you're stuck. I think that's when I personally do my best work. Like I know it's fucked to say, but like when I'm in those situations, I am able to make decisions extremely fast. I'm able to problem solve. I'm able to execute in a way that is inhumane at some points, but again, being in those times drive you to have to find a way to dig yourself out of times. And you're right. Like you learn so much in a short period of time. So I agree with you. Like I'm the type of person that like looks at the glass half full, not half empty. Like every situation propels you forward. Every situation makes you stronger. Every situation makes you better, brighter, smarter, faster. Like, the stuff I learned in the last 24 months, it's priceless. It's hard to say like that I'm happy that I went through it, but in a way, like I learned so much. I learned so much about the team, about MDS and myself. So yeah, I think a good can come from bad 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. The ups and the downs. I want to talk about your, content and your kind of marketing over the last couple of years because, even in 2021, you were absolutely crushing the content game. Like you'd had that kind of saga with Hershey's and you turned that into kind of a bit of a like reality, like ongoing documentary type situation. And from there, your content's just gotten, better and better and more interesting and very much that approach of kind of like almost like a reality TV series about building a business. So I want to talk about your content and how you've kind of like approached and evolved and just like a little bit of like insight into what you guys are up to. I'm like such a sucker for guerrilla marketing and like organic storytelling. So I love to see it.
I love to see it too. I think that there's a lot of content out there and we're drowning in content. And I think we're lacking a lot of originality in content. And I understand why people don't get original and content uh, because of the algorithms and because of, the want to go viral. So I think if we go back to, what we do at Midday Squares and how we tell our stories, I just want to start by saying, like, we don't have it all figured out. Like, it's really a ongoing process. What worked for us from 0 to 5 years is not going to work for us for 5 to 10 years. Content creation is ever evolving and changes, and you need to kind of grow with it. And I would say for us, we started off with telling a story with our iPhones. When we started in our condo, just picking up a phone and recording, even when we felt super uncomfortable doing it. I mean, I hated being in front of the camera, and it would take me sometimes hours to put together a video. I'd have to retake it 100 times. Why? Because I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't like the way I sounded. I felt cringe. I was like, who am I even speaking to? And you push through it, you get better at it, you get more comfortable, and you realize that there are people out there that resonate with you. There are people out there that are your people and connect with your messaging. And so that's what happened at the beginning of Midday Squares. We were telling our story, people connected with it, and it created, a community. And so for the first like 3 years, we really focused on the behind the scenes of building Midday Squares, the drama, the highs, the lows, the good and the bad. And even the characters in the story. So like, when we first started, we had, some of our early startup team, like Jordan and Ali and Karan, like different people that were real characters in the show. Like they were big, larger than life personalities, and that added to it. So we had this dynamic, we had this kind of energy that was going on early on with our stories, which was a lot of the behind the scenes. And then that kind of evolved into, how do we tell a really impactful story, or not even impactful? What does impactful mean? I mean, for us, does it make somebody feel something deeply? So is it hitting somebody emotionally? Is it educational? Is it entertainment? I mean, what is it doing to the viewer, right? How is it affecting them? And so we started telling these like 3 minute, 4 minute short like episodes, right? And that was really, really challenging to figure out, because basically at that time we had a full-time videographer who would just film at the office and follow us around with a camera and follow the team around and be in on the meetings. So we'd get like 40 hours of footage a week, and then we'd have to kind of navigate that down to a 3-4 minute story. So that was really challenging, but we figured it out and we did it. And I want to say, like, building teams to do this is really hard because it's new for businesses. It's new for the industry to find creators that want to be in a company and want to tell stories for a company. It was definitely challenging because creatives want to work on many different projects and don't want to be tied down. So kind of finding those creators that were willing to stay, that wanted to stay, and that also didn't get involved in the politics. Well, not the politics, but I want to say the office culture, because the videographers shouldn't get involved with the office culture, because then it makes their job complicated, because they're supposed to be telling a story, So anyways, that's a whole other episode on the dynamic of how we've had to navigate that and how it was challenging too for the teammates. But ultimately, by separating the two, you got the best content, because the videographer was like a journalist looking for the best story, really engaging in the conversation. So we worked on those stories for a little bit. And then we realized that the strongest stories, well, there's not the strongest stories, but stories that really got virality on our TikTok and stuff like that were stories that were scripted. So we started writing scripts for our stories. Everything is true. It's just more scripted. And basically we take all the B-roll and we build upon the script and tell the story. So that's what we do. We started doing that about a year and a half ago, and we started getting virality on TikTok. And I think it really resonated with people, that form of storytelling. So basically what we're trying to optimize for is, how do we engage the algorithm, but also stay true to our storytelling style, which has been really hard because, the algorithm favors certain things and you're trying to be original and still tell great stories, but you still want to get organic views. We're still a business, right? Like, our content arm needs to make sense financially. So we need those organic views. Like last year, I think we did something of 55 million organic views, which is incredible. I mean, if you put a dollar to that, it's quite high of what that would cost to pay for those views. There's real accountability and real challenge there on how to continue to get organic views and to continue to get videos that take off and kind of hit the algorithm. So we're still a question mark. And then there's the piece of how quickly can we get content out. And that's one of our biggest challenges, because to make these stories takes time. It takes about 8 days for my content creator, James, to really put together a script, bring the B-roll in, start piecing together a story, get a first story draft to me. Then we go back and forth. Then we keep the process is 8 days, and it's long. Like, I'm talking.
How many stories do you post in a week?
One story. That's the problem. That's what we're facing today. That's the problem today. The problem today is that we need to get content out faster, and we can't. And we need to basically, like, literally today, I was just like, I'm gonna show you I have this little paper. Like, I was working on my marketing strategy today at Midday Squares, because the issue is how do you continue to build this division and manage costs and make sure it makes sense and create an ROI and create accountability and continue to keep the community engaged. Like, there's so many times you could tell the story. And I think for Midday Squares, when we started a couple of years ago, we constantly had that drama. We constantly had so many stories to tell. And now the business is gotten to a point where there's a lot of stories to tell, but we can't tell all the stories. And the reason why we can't tell the stories is because it can hurt our business. And why will it hurt our business? Well, it could be with, retailers. It could be with government, like government agencies, and how we interact. And like some of the things, like there's crazy stories that happen at Midday Squares. We've recorded, we've documented, and we want to tell, but it could put the company at risk. So a content creator has less risk than a company has, right? Because a company still needs to sell bars. So a company needs to tread relatively lightly on, the type of content they put out. So that's what we're kind of grappling with today, on like how to tell our stories. And we are kind of, our mission is to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we are still doing that. But as you get bigger into a business, the problems are different than, let's say, oh, we have no more coconut sugar, and what are we going to do? We can't produce, right? They become a little more complex. So we're still trying to figure out how to navigate that. Like, how ballsy are we willing to be? How much risk are we willing to take? Like, is our community going to have our back? Are they not? Like, that's where we're trying to test the waters and figure out like what is next, and how do we kind of continue to build this company, and is the strategy even going to work for us anymore? So there's a lot of question marks around the expansion of our content and how we're going to see it unfold. But for anybody who's listening to this, that's thinking about getting into content and wants to tell stories or wants to get out there for their business or whatever it is that they're doing, I mean, social media is amazing. It's a free platform you can use to get your story or get your product or get anything that you want out there. I think it's important to be yourself unapologetically as much as you can. And I think that people will resonate with you. In terms of like the Midday Squares process, right now on the team, we have one content creator. His name is James. He's fucking amazing. I love him. And then myself. Okay. And we have had bigger teams at times where we've had multiple videographers on the ground. And right now we're a small team, but we haven't decided how we're going to expand the team. And so this is what we're going to be working on in the future. I know I'm jumping. I have ADHD, so I'm all over the place, but let me just go back. So our process is record what's kind of happening, the day-to-day, get the story on whatever's happening. It could be what's going on in the business. It could be what's going on with the founders. It could be what's going on, just anything. And then basically take it back to the editing suite and look at your content. Then James and I will sit in a room, we'll talk for about an hour on an audio recording, and we'll talk about what's kind of going on. So let's say we're going to be doing the story coming up about like how we had to change our name, Busta Peanut, which was our original name of our peanut butter bar, to Peanut Butter. So like, we'll go in the room, we'll talk about what happened, and then basically we'll take that and we'll develop it into a script. We'll refine it, and then we'll go into piecing together the story. Then we'll record, and then it takes me like a good hour to record. It's very hard to like memorize the lines and record it. And then James goes back, edits it into a story. We try to make it a minute and a half. and then we throw it up on TikTok. And the goal is to try to get 4 or 5 of those videos going up a week. But the question mark is, what's the cost, and how do we do it efficiently and optimize for it? But that's really our process right now.
And when you're, looking at kind of the ROI and the views that you're getting and things like that, is this still kind of like your lead driver for the things that are shifting the needle for the company when it comes to your marketing strategy? Or is it now like, yes, like content is a big part of it, but now we've really got to be doubling down on strategic partnerships and demos? And is it, influencers, or is it new product development that fuels the growth? Like, what is is this still like, obviously it's part of who the brand is and it's a big part of like the DNA of what you guys have built, but is it the thing that's shifting the needle still, or is it a mix of things? I mean, obviously it's a mix of things, but like, what are the big needle shifters? I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
I would say there's a few different things. I would say the big needle pushers are definitely the disruption that we do through organic content works. It's hard to measure exactly, how it's driving, let's say, sales in stores. Presence of the brand is a good assessment of how our organic reach is helping the brand as a whole through our content. And then I would say, obviously, like strategic influencer marketing, which Nick manages, which is our performance marketing arm, definitely moves the needle big time. I mean, influencers have influence. That's why they're influencers. So that's a key piece to the puzzle too. But I would say this, like, content is king. Like, of course, if you could figure out, or make great content and it goes viral and continue to get virality, that is organic virality is one of the best ways to get your brand out there. Celebritizing your own brand or celebritizing yourself and building a community and a fan base is king. Like, that's the holy grail. The question is how to continue to do it. And that's the stuff we're working on this year. Like, just to give you context, I co-CEO with Nick, but I also am still in deep execution with the team. Like, we just brought on a VP of Ops in May, and he's doing incredible things. But, we're building the team together. And so I would say right now, I only spend about 10%. 10% is me being conservative, I don't get a lot of time to spend on marketing and strategy and brand and content and media. So there's very little time going to this part of Midday Squares. So, when I started make shit, sell shit, market shit, well, 2024 is the year that we're going to be honing in and doubling down on marketing shit and figuring out our plan. And I can tell you something, when the energy goes to that, we will come up with a plan. And that's going to be, how we drive through the vision. And then it's A/B testing. What's working, what's not? How do we switch it? What's the flywheel that we need to be looking at when we begin that journey of market shit? But like, that's coming up in 2024. So I'm very excited about it. But content is hard. I mean, it is hard, but I think consistency is really key. Being true to yourself and making stuff that you would be a consumer of. Like, you got to start with you. What would you watch your own content? Would you consume it? And that's the first thing that's really important. And if you're scared to put yourself out there, like, then maybe content's not for you, because you got to put yourself out there if you want to, make content and do all those things. And even till this day, even though I've done it a million times, I still get insecure sometimes to put myself out there. It's hard. It's not easy, but it is a great tool. It did what it does, and it did and continues to do wonders for our brand. And so I'm a big advocate of making content and putting yourself out there. But nonetheless, it's hard.
I agree. And like I often surprise people when I say, like, hey, when I started the podcast, I was terrified of public speaking. I was terrified of being on camera. And it wasn't until like episode 70 that I started to feel more confident in these conversations, and kind of like I had a bit of, a groove going on, because I was just so shy and so not that person. And I think that everyone pretty much starts from that place of being like, I don't know how to do this, but like, you've just got to try, flex that muscle, build that muscle, and then over time you get better at it. And like, just, you shouldn't let yourself be crippled by that perfection of getting started, because everyone figures it out and goes on the journey, right?
1,000%. And we're putting ourselves out there every single day. I'm talking about you and I. Like, I am the same like you. I don't like public speaking. I don't like being on podcasts. And not because I don't like to do it. It's because I'm nervous. It's because I'm worried about X, Y, and Z. But if we don't do it, how are we going to get better? Because the thing is, it's not that I don't want to do it. It's that I'm fearful of doing it because of the things that are in my head. But if we don't practice, like you said, practice and exercise that muscle, we're going to be stuck doing nothing. And then that's just a boring life. That's just a life that's not filled with purpose. So
100%. Last question I want to ask you before we jump into the 6 quickies is, if you were thinking about starting a business tomorrow, kind of taking the knowledge and the insights that you've had from the last 5 years, so you're coming from a place of, yep, I know what I've done and what's worked and kind of the power of hindsight. How would you start a business tomorrow from scratch? You're like, okay, cool. Like, what's step 101? What am I doing to start a new business? Doesn't matter what it is or category, blah, blah, blah. Or unless you want to go that deep, you can.
for me, I would really make sure that if I was launching a product, that I started with a product that was financially viable. Midday Squares has had to dig its way out of a negative gross margin. We started the business at a negative 14% gross margin. And I'm so proud to say that we are at 58% gross margin this quarter. And I know I mentioned earlier in the episode that not last June, but the June before, we were losing $1 million a month. Like now we're at 100,000 a month and losing 100,000 a month. And it's a massive difference. And this year we're going to reach profitability, but that's after 5 years. And so if I was to restart a business, I would make sure that I had a strong gross margin and that my product was financially viable from day one. I know that it's easy to say that now, but honestly, it was really treacherous going from negative 4% to 58%. And we still, our goal is 65% gross margin. That's an incredible business. And so we're still working our way to get there. But yeah, I mean, it was brutal for 5 years, So I would say if you're thinking about starting a product, try to get that right.
And so just so I can fully understand, does that mean like from day one, you'd be like, okay, cool. What are the products that the unit cost is this, and I'm going to model it out so that my margin is this. And like from the get-go, there is a strong and healthy margin for kind of like e-com, D2C and retail, and then build off the back of that instead of something that is like, too small a unit cost or something like that there's not enough wiggle room.
Exactly. Yeah. It's from the get-go, understanding as much as possible, like pricing structure. So like, for example, Midday Squares, Perfect Bar in the US, which is a protein bar that lives in the fridge next to us, has done it already. Like they're 14 years in, they've built an incredible business. They're doing, I think they're going to do 300 million or so this year. Don't quote me on that number, but they're doing really well, and they understand their pricing structure. Yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, look, they've been doing it for 14 years and they have a good strategy. And so I think that like my advice would be is like, whatever product you're going to launch, like find what's on the market that is working, that's similar to your product. And then try to, do an analysis on that competitor. Like, why did they price this way? Like, what's their product expansion and why did they choose to do that? Why are they placed like this? Like, I think kind of going deep on not just any product that's out there, but something that's similar of somebody that has been there, done it, because pricing structure is really important. Gross margin is really important. Look, sometimes the reality is if you're on here and you're listening to me and you're like, that's not my reality. You're right. That wasn't our reality. Like I'm sitting here on proof. Like we knew we could get to the gross margin over time by doing X, Y, and Z, but it was painful. So I'm just saying, you may not always be able to start a company right off the bat with, a gross margin and the right gross margin and, perfect pricing structure and all these things. That's okay too. Like I'm living proof that we start with -4, we're here at 58% gross margin. You can, you have to obviously do your due diligence and make sure that you actually can get there. But if I was to do it again, I would like to start with my gross margin being where it needs to be.
Yeah, love that. Great piece of advice. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, well, let's jump into the 6 quick questions. Some of them we might have touched on already, but some of them we might not have. Question number 1 is, what's your why? Why are you waking up every morning and putting your energy into midday squares?
I have two whys. My first why is, I get really excited about reimagining, how people consume chocolate. I think it's a really exciting mission. Like, Hershey's and Mars, and, they built the confectionery, department. And we grew up on Mars and Hershey's as being the bars and the confection that we ate in North America. And those companies have done incredible things. And even with our stuff with Hershey's in the past, I love it. I mean, it's all good vibes, but Midday Squares is reimagining how you consume chocolate and reimagining what confectionery should look like. And that really fires me up. And then also, like, I do, building this company allows me to, hopefully one day do all these things that I want to do that I might not get to do if I don't build a company to this magnitude. And some of those things are really simple, like, you know, opening up a little cafe in the Laurentians, which is a place in Montreal, which is like a little ski village, making sourdough bread and coffees and whatever it is, like all these little things that I have in mind, becoming a bigger industrial builder and seeing that through. So I think there's two things. It's like my love for food and reimagining what it can look like. And then also having the ability to continue exploring, continuing to tinker. Those are my whys for now.
Really good ones. Really good ones. Question number 2 is, what's been your favorite marketing moment so far?
My recent favorite marketing moment that we did, which I absolutely love, is our 5-year anniversary video. We basically did a wrestling campaign and I just loved it. It was so creative. It was so much fun. I just loved it. If you have a minute, go to our TikTok or our Midday Squares Instagram and check out our 5-year anniversary campaign. It was just like, I'm a creative at heart. So like doing that campaign with James was so much fun and just allowed me to step out of like the operations. And it fired me up. It made me feel alive. Like, we make chocolate, but yet we made this wild, entertaining video that really is an analogy of, the last 5 years, but in a fun, entertaining way. So that was one of my favorite marketing moments as of lately.
I love that. Yeah, you got to have fun with it. Got to have fun with the marketing. Question number 3, what's your go-to business resource at the moment? Where are you learning things?
Chat GPT. Chat GPT, I would say, I've started reading some books. I really want to dive deeper into what it means to be a great CEO. So I'm really focusing a lot on leadership and how to be a great leader. So I'm diving into a lot on that. And I'm actually looking forward to reading the Elon Musk book. I have 3 books that I really want to read. That I'm not an avid reader, but I'm working to get more into reading. So the Elon Musk book that just came out, the Steve Jobs and the Phil Knight. They built incredible companies, and so just understanding a little more into how it was done and kind of their thoughts. So I'm looking into that, and also just continuing with my business coach. Consistent weekly sessions.
Shoe Dog's a great book. Definitely one of the best, one of the greats. Question number 4 is, how do you win the day? What are your rituals in the AM or the PM that bring you kind of happiness and feeling, successful and calm in the mind?
I would say that the gym. So I started weight training about a year ago, and weight training has been super helpful to releasing stress. So I used to do a lot more like HIIT or high cardio exercises, which I still like. I just don't do as much. But weight training, I do it at the end of the day, right when I get home from work, 45 minutes. And it just allows me to release stress. So that really allows me to go into my night feeling at ease. I've been, again, just like kind of trying to do best day ever as much as possible. So sauna, spending a lot of time in the nature as much as I can, really enjoying my mornings. So like just waking up, taking a minute, having a coffee, listening to music, and just trying to quiet the mind, and then getting into work and just showing up to work, choosing to be happy because it's a choice, and putting my best foot forward. And so when I get home, I feel purposeful. Then I hit that weight training workout, and then just go into the evening and try to disconnect. Simple things, simple things.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the simple things and small joys. Small joys are important throughout the day. What is the worst money mistake you've made in the business, and how much did it cost you?
I would say the most recent was, so when we were launching into Target, basically Target put in this incredible order. We got super excited, and all we wanted to do was fill it. And we kind of didn't think through much more. And so once we shipped the product, Midday Squares has a short shelf life. We had to buy back some of the product on our initial launch, which costed probably about $200,000. And so that was a really hard mistake to swallow. It was an oversight that we made. We learned from it. So basically, how do you not make that mistake ever again? You basically get the information from the buyer. You understand in your category, what product is selling the most and what are their velocities. So basically, you take the highest velocities in the category, or, in your category, and then you basically back it up into the order, because you have to understand, like, can you sell, are you going to be able to move product? And so you have to run the math. You have to do the math, and you have to determine and basically take your average velocities and then say, does this order make sense in terms of when our product's going to expire? Can we sell all the product out by the expiry date? And if not, then you need to cut that order down, instead of just saying yes and getting excited, because obviously, as a company, you want to take all the revenue, you want to say yes to revenue, take the revenue, but instead do the simple math, do the velocities, understand what their highest velocity is for their best selling product, and then determine if the order makes sense or not. So now we apply that to every new customer, and we haven't gotten ourselves in a pickle like that since then. So that was the last big expense that I could think of in this moment. That was painful, but we got through it.
Last question number 6. I'm sure you have so many of these tucked into the bank, and you've already shared so many, but what is just a crazy story, good or bad, from building the business of Midday Squares?
I thought this was pretty crazy. I mean, this was a really big marketing moment for us. I know you asked me what was my favorite marketing moment in the last, like, my favorite marketing moment period, but this year we were, I was in a therapy session. When I got out of my therapy session, I got a text from an acquaintance saying, like, Kim Kardashian just pulled your product out of her bag. And I was like, what? And I didn't even know what she was talking about. She's like, yeah, in Vogue Italia, you need to see it. I'm freaking out. So I like run upstairs. I get Nick. I'm like, I just got a crazy message that supposedly Kim Kardashian pulled the Midday Squares out of her bag on a Vogue Italia interview. So anyways, we start going on Instagram, we're looking, and we don't see anything. So we're like, okay, this is probably just fake news. But then we go and we search, Kim Kardashian, Vogue Italia, her interview pops up on YouTube. And then, like, a couple minutes into it, she's like talking about what she keeps in her bag. And then she's like, and when I get hungry, I actually found these like Midday Squares snacks that I love. It's like a healthy Reese. I don't know. She said like something that like literally like it's literally our marketing. Okay. Like what we would, what people say about our product. And she pulls out peanut butter and almond crunch out of her purse. And it was just a wild moment, and we were just fired up about it. So that's a good moment. And I think like that goes back to saying that when you have a great product, it gets recognition. So I think it does take time for sure, and consistency and showing up and doing whatever you need to do. But, like people pay millions of dollars for Kim Kardashian to promote their products. And she just loved the product and she just took it out of her purse and shouted it out. And I respect that because it goes a long way for a brand, you know?
Wow, that is epic. What a cool story to finish on. Thank you so much. I've loved this episode. I always love chatting to you. Love your energy, love your vibe, love your brand. I'm your hype girl.
Thank you, Doone. You, honestly, you're my hype girl. I have to say, like, you get me to come out of my comfort zone, to come on these podcasts, to hang, and you always make me feel comfortable. So I'm so fired up to be here. Thank you for having me tonight, and I really enjoyed our chat.